You know the deal, friends. Post-game victory podcast, instant reaction as the New York Football Giants. Listen, you ain't got to do it pretty. You just got to take home the wins. 3-1 following that home victory over the Chicago Bears. We'll get into it all, including a lot of the injury narratives that are going to be following the New York Football Giants coming out of this game. We break it all down next. That is it, my friends. It's OGP, the One Giant Podcast, where, of course, I am your host, Adam Armbrecht. Doesn't matter that I break down the Brooklyn Nets for the Locked On Nets podcast, my boy Doug Norrie, because we are simply here to talk about those New York Football Giants, talk about what ultimately amounts to being 3-1. Listen, we're going to walk through this game script here. 20-12, they get the win over the Chicago Bears. Obviously, this continues to go into the category of just one of the things we're going to have to deal with as New York Football Giants fans this season. There's no two ways about it. The New York Football Giants are going to have to win a lot of games ugly. They did exactly that in this particular matchup. And there's a couple of things that we have to take a look at here. And first and foremost, listen, you're 3-1. First head coach for Brian Daboll since Tom Coughlin to go 3-1 for the New York Football Giants. You don't give any of them back. You pick every single one up, you put it in your pocket, and you feel great about it. And it affords you the ability to look forward on the schedule and say, yeah, are there going to be hard matchups coming for the Giants? Of course there are. And that's why these wins matter. Likewise, if you're the Chicago Bears, if you had been able to win that game, 3-1 would matter for everything that's going to happen going forward. Ultimately, I think what you saw in this game, right? Because coming into it, we're going to talk about the injuries, Daniel Jones, Evan Neal. I think we had a couple other ones there as well. Kenny Golladay, not that we're necessarily concerned about him. However, we said coming into this game that you want to go out and win one in convincing, dominant fashion over a team in the Chicago Bears that do not have all the weapons. They do not have all the talent. They do not have necessarily the franchise starting quarterback, or at least one that is ready to go right now. Who cares? Go out and dominate this game. Now, the Giants didn't exactly do that. However, I do think that another week removed from losing Leonard Williams, Wink Martindale found ways to get more success on that defensive side of the ball. And by the way, that starts simply by having Kayvon Thibodeaux and having Azeez Ojulari one more week further along in their return from injury, right? They play between the two of them, closer to, I think, 60% for Tibbs, 45% last week for Azeez Ojulari. We'll get into those snap counts later in this week, but obviously they were out on the field for the bulk of this one. That gave the Giants an opportunity to put some real pressure onto Justin Fields and onto this offense. And there was a couple of phases on the defensive side of the ball where this thing was won. Let's be 100% clear about it. That really made an impact and were smart football plays by this defensive unit. We're going to get to the guy who is on the thumbnail here over on YouTube, if that's where you choose to enjoy this action, Mr. Tay Crowder, who continues to grow into his role and continues to be evolving underneath Wink Martindale. But we said all along, from the second that you drafted Kayvon Thibodeaux, yes, getting after the quarterback is going to be rule number one for him, putting pressure, being disruptive. But in this game, as we had said coming in, Khalil Herbert, you cannot sleep on him and the value that he brings to the offensive side of the ball potentially. You needed to be able to get lateral on a handful of plays. You need to be able to contain that attack on the offensive side of the ball and continue to keep the ball in Justin Fields' hand. And by the way, when you look at the stat line there, like for me, how did this game script go? It went the way it basically went the way that you thought both these teams, in my opinion, were going to be operating. They're both trying to grind it out. They both understand the offense has some, deficiencies on it. And it was about midway through that second quarter when all of a sudden the Giants offense made a bit of a decision, and that decision rewarded them. Wouldn't you know it? It involved a lot of Saquon Barkley. But the defensive side of the ball is what won the day here. Justin Fields goes 11 of 22 for 174 yards, almost 8 yards per completion. Remember, though, had a couple of longer passes in this one. If I go inside the receiving numbers, you had a long of 56 to Mooney, who had 4 for 94, did most of that damage in the first half, 24 and 23 for Khalil Herbert, and Trayvon Wesco, the tight end, caught just, I think, his 7th pass of his career. Those were the big plays there. But even just that one play to Mooney, right, speaks volumes to the amount of passing yards that were available out there for Justin Fields. We talk about those rushing numbers, 19 for 77. It was there for Herbert. It just came down to the same way we talk about the Giants game script. If you're trailing in one of these games, if you're coming down in and the defensive unit continues to hold and force you to take field goals early in this one, makes it a lot harder to stick to a game script that you want to. Unlike the other side, the New York Football Giants. I said, what changed there about midway through the second quarter? Remember, this went to halftime at 14-9, but you started to see the turnover there as they worked out for that second touchdown for the New York Football Giants. And that was the ability to get out there on the field and to say, first and foremost, what are we talking about when it comes to Daniel Jones? Listen, I know that he went down with the ankle injury. We hope that he's going to be okay. We hope that he's going to be out there for the New York Football Giants. But he had 13 passes. And by the way, it was midway through the third quarter before the injury when he had those 13 passes. They were being conservative, 71 passing yards through the air for him, only took 1 sack. My goodness, as we welcome in Andrew Makowitz, getting himself situated here in the background for a little post-game takeaway session. And welcome into everybody. By the way, let me do real quick here. Out to Bry, out to Tyrone, out to Timothy Firth, out to Blue City Empire Sports, out to Tuto, everybody for being in the room. This is a victory post-game podcast here. So we always make sure that we say hello and welcome and how are you? And there is the healthy, wealthy, and wise Mr. Andrew Makowitz to go along with Abel. Make sure if I missed anybody else, welcome into the show. Andy, I was singing the praises of the defensive unit and all the work that they did, specifically some of that ability from Kayvon Thibodeaux and from Azeez Ojulari to do the both and, right? Put pressure and also protect the boundaries, getting lateral. I was about to turn over a little bit to the offensive side of the ball and the way that they made that choice midway through the second quarter to, once again, commit to running with Daniel Jones. But before we do, I mentioned his name, didn't mention why he was so good in this one. Tay Crowder really stepped up and helped to anchor this defensive unit that without Leonard Williams, with a total hodgepodge of the linebacking core, needs someone to anchor them in the middle. Man, he was very effective in this one on that side of the ball.
Mr. Irrelevant was not irrelevant in this game. Adam, he was everywhere.
First words he speaks, and he really knocks out of the park.
I mean, Tay Crowder was awesome. You know, you and I were texting during the entire game, and Tay Crowder really
kept being there.
He was impressive to me today. Like, yeah, you know what the Giants coaching staff has seen in Tay Crowder is the reason why Blake Martinez isn't here on this roster right now. They said we want to get younger, we want to get more athletic, and we want Tay Crowder to be out there. Tay Crowder was awesome. He led this team in tackles today with 7. He also had a sack. He felt like he was in the backfield having pressures against Justin Fields regularly. When Wake Martindale wanted to blitz, they asked Tay Crowder to do a lot today, and man, did he deliver.
100%. I agree with you. I mean, this is a guy who you and I had our doubts about coming into the offseason, just about where he fit in the pecking order. And you know what? In some ways, as we continue to reiterate, under good coaching, all of a sudden, I think that the trickle-down effect from, Xavier McKinney on the back end of this, the play of Adoree Jackson, who, man, I have not seen in a Giants uniform at a minimum, a player at the cornerback position who closes with such ferocity and quickness on a lot of those plays. But to your point, man, Tay Crowder is anchoring this defense. Now, it doesn't mean that everything is perfect from that side of the ball. There, some big plays were given up in a couple of chunks, but ultimately, as this thing turned into the back half of it, and we knew the offense wasn't going to be doing a whole heck of a lot for you, you needed this unit to continue to play consistently. I thought Tay Crowder did an excellent job, and continuing with Tay Crowder, just wanted to sing the praises also of Jalen Smith, who we know was here last year, but all of a sudden comes in, and he was that second man on scene with a lot of these plays.
Yeah, I know you talked about the defense already. I'm coming in a little late. I wanted to make sure that Tay Crowder got his flowers because he deserves it in this game. You mentioned Adoree Jackson. Every time they touched the ball, he was right to the ball instantly, didn't give anybody any room. He was great. Shout out to Dexter Lawrence, though, also on the defensive line.
Much better game in this one, too.
Without Leonard Williams, they're asking Dexter Lawrence to do a lot. You've talked about Wink Martindale saying he's like my favorite player that I've ever coached. He delivered in a situation where we needed him. 2 sacks. He was a stalwart in the middle. The one thing on the defensive side of the ball is they were getting pressure against a mobile quarterback, and the problem was he was getting release outside of the pocket, and that was a challenge. They knew he wasn't going to be able to throw the ball. I said to you, I think there's a turnover going to happen eventually because you can't have this much happening without him being able to execute passing plays, without something happening. He was able to leverage his feet to be able to get out of the pocket, something the Giants need to clean up. But also, Adam, they did not give up scores. Anytime they give up a big play, they made a stop. On the Richie James muffed punt, they got a stop. The defense continued to get a stop and said, you know what? As long as our offense can put up a few more points, we're going to be good. And they were.
Yeah, 100%, man. You mentioned, it was funny because we wonder what was going to happen from first half to second half in this one. We're going to talk about Daniel Jones here in a second. I said at the top, injuries obviously are going to play a factor in any game, let alone the Giants season. But I really wondered because we were texting as well, where I said, "Boy, I got to tell you, this Chicago Bears defense just doesn't give a crap about reading what's happening on play 1 and then adjusting on play 2 or on play 7, 13, or 19. The offense kept going back to this particular well, and we'll dive into that a little bit deeper. But from the first half to the second half, I wondered what was going to look different. From a defensive perspective, we said first half, well, the wave was getting there. The pressure was getting there. And you mentioned it. Justin Herbert, elusive, escapes, gets out of the pocket, picks up a first down, dumps it off, whatever the case may be. That started to get shut down in the second half of the game. And it was about the second wave, right? It's about the safeties closing down quicker. It's about staying at home a little bit more and trusting that, hey, the first wave has to get there. And Winkle is always going to bring pressure, but those linebackers, those secondary players needed to be ready to plug those holes afterwards and just mitigate some of those easy little chunks that Fields was picking up with his legs in the first half.
They did, and they did it admirably. And the defense, I think, gets kudos. They stepped up. I texted you, the Giants did everything they needed to do, up 8 with 5 minutes to go. That's where you sit there and say, we are a defensive team. We've shown it throughout the course of the first few games. We have to be able to get a stop here. The offense the offense didn't look great, and we're going to turn over to it now. But the offense scored 20 points. They had an 8-point lead late in the fourth quarter. That's when the defense needs to get one stop to win the game. And they did, Adam, and all credit to the defense for doing what they did.
100%. Yeah. Listen, I said at the top, you don't give these wins back, right? Doesn't matter. We said we maybe wanted to see something a little more dominant on both sides of the ball in this particular game. Okay, it didn't happen. You still take the win. You're still, again, these teams seem eerily similar in a lot of ways walking into this game. You'd much rather be the 3-1 team saying, we won it. It doesn't matter how we got there than being 2-2. And I think Chicago's going to have 4 of their next 5 games on the road, right? So these things matter in the big picture. Offensively, then we talk about, listen, there's so much here. Okay. Obviously, Daniel Jones gets rolled up on the ankle, so he has to come out of the game. They go with Tyrod Taylor. Here's my brief note on Tyrod Taylor. Here's the only problem with having a guy that you want to have as a competent backup. When he gets on the field, dude wants the job. And you want that mentality, except for when he leans his head down, takes an absolutely brutal hit, and has to come out of the game. Like they said it on the broadcast, as the last quarterback available, you got to be smarter in those moments. You're there to protect the lead. You're there to give your team a chance to win a game. And unfortunately, he's trying to put, I think, a little bit too much on his back. Prior to that, though, and go ahead. Yeah.
I was just going to say, yeah, we're going to go back to Daniel Jones. Tyrod Taylor looked mobile. He looked good. He looked like he had command of the offense when he was there. I will say, we'll get to his interception and stuff later. Yeah. On that run play that he has, I'm like, oh, get the first down. And he's thinking the exact same thing that we're all thinking. He's like, if I slide down, I'm short and we got to punt the ball. If I just extend, I can pick this up. Yep. And you love to see it because you want the guy to try to make it. But those are the types of decisions that Daniel Jones was making that we all lambasted him for. They're like, you got to get down. We need you on the field. And so to your point, it's like, you got to get down, live to see another day, because you're putting the team in a way worse spot if you are being susceptible to injury in that point, as opposed to being 2 yards short on 3rd and 2 or 4th and 1. And we figure out where we are from there.
100%. I don't know. Let me see. What's the over on how many times I say 100% this episode?
Well,
Now,
maybe you won't, because you and I have had different feelings on the first part of the game as we were talking about what was happening. Talk me through the start of the game. Tell me what you were thinking.
oh, no, I mean, listen, it was the first half of the game. Daniel Jones had 10 passing attempts in the first half, 5 rushing attempts. It was midway through the second quarter when you saw the light go on again for this offense and for Mike Kafka and for Brian Dable. And we've heard this from Brian Dable, keeps a little whisper in the ear, Saquon Barkley, and the legs of Daniel Jones. His best asset is his legs. Like that is, regardless of what you think about him, what he's going to be, what he's not going to be. His best attribute right now for him is his mobility and his ability to run with the football. He finishes this game understanding that he went out of the game early with 68 rushing yards on 6 attempts. He threw for 71 passing yards through the air. We understand what is not available for this team right now, right? Richie James is not a number 1, 2, or 3rd wide receiver. If you have him as the 4th, you've got some real opportunities. David Sills, a lot of fans are happy with him, happy for him, as are we. And yet you see how you get exposed, right? You get exposed when opportunities come. Last week, slips and falls, interception, cost the team potentially a game-winning drive and cost Daniel Jones an opportunity to continue to show us what he's made of. This week, drop passes, right? A lot of sequences like that play out in the first half that make it hard to cast a lot of judgment on Daniel Jones. And I'll let you get in here, but just to be clear, as I said, I have my separate evaluation of Daniel Jones. And when I talk about this football game, I say, well, we've got absolutely no wide receiver talent out there. The offensive line is struggling in pass protection. And then whatever I think I can evaluate on Daniel Jones.
So I'm going to give people a peek behind the curtain right now, Adam, because I have my text messages up where I message you. I'm like, oh, the Giants are getting good pressure on Justin Fields. It looks like it's good. And you're like, I'm just getting settled in. I had a lot of stuff going on. Like, what's the deal? And I said this, and I quote, you missed 2 runs into the front of the offensive line, and then Daniel Jones not being able to complete his drop back before an untouched blitz is getting him. So it's pretty much standard to what we've seen so far in terms of Daniel Jones getting pressure.
Yeah, I saw those plays. Yeah.
Well, but the reason why I'm starting that out is because we saw that happen, and it's like this is going to be what we saw before. Daniel Jones is going to have no time to throw, and are we just going to make excuses that Daniel Jones can't do anything? No. Mike Kafka and the offense decided the next time out, we are going to change the game plan. And they did those naked bootlegs. They did those designed runs for Daniel Jones to the outside. They completely changed the script. I want to say kudos right away to Mike Kafka and Brian Dable for calling the right type of plays, knowing that we just don't have the offensive line right now to drop back and have any quarterback throw with consistency in the pocket. And you may say, well, the Bears didn't adjust fast enough. The Bears didn't just adjust
They
fast
didn't.
enough.
Kudos to them for not adjusting. That's fine.
Right. Like I'm apologizing.
I'm not going to apologize because you're too dumb.
I'm apologizing to absolutely no one because guess what? The Giants kept doing it and they kept saying, until you make an adjustment, this is our best play. And guess what? We got 2 touchdowns out of them not adjusting. So like, I can't feel bad because the Giants were exploiting it. Early in the second half, it looked like finally the Bears decided, like, hey, maybe we're going to keep contained on the outside on the bootleg, which led to a sack, led to Daniel Jones's ankle injury. But the Giants were calling great plays, knowing that the offensive line couldn't do anything. And when they were trying to throw the ball, guys like David Sills were dropping balls that were Tanner Hudson or whoever it was dropping balls that could have been first downs to move the ball down the field.
Yeah, I give Tanner Hudson the excuse on his one just because the defender, I mean, literally, good throw from Daniel Jones. It is like threading the needle across that hand. I think he loses sight of it. And here's my thing. We're going to stay completely, I mean, let's go ahead and stay completely positive. I have some additional thoughts about Daniel Jones. And again, like we say, every single game now, like you and I were also talking, and I said, it is very clear what the New York Football Giants and the coaching staff are trying to accomplish in these first 4 games. They understand that this is not going to be as pretty or as successful, let's say, in the wins and loss category as we get deeper into the season and face some tougher matchups. So they're trying to find ways to manufacture wins. We said this about, I'll tie it into Tyrod Taylor, where he comes into the game, has a couple of runs. He's a different type of running quarterback. We all get that. He's 33 years old. He's not the future. Like no one's making that conversation. Daniel Jones had tried to connect with Darius Slayton down the left sideline. Everyone was calling for him to be out there on the field now. And again, same thing like when we're evaluating where the issues of this game. On that particular throw, my first one was, okay, there's pass interference. That disrupts the play. My second one was, it doesn't matter. Darius Slayton still needs to catch that ball because it hits him in the hands. And the third component of it is, hey, if Daniel Jones throws that ball 5 yards further downfield in front of Darius Slayton, then when Darius Slayton inevitably drops that pass, we get to blame solely Darius Slayton. And it's like, this is what is frustrating, because you have to take that one moment, that one play where the protection is good enough, and say, here's what we can take away from as many phases as possible. The reason why I bring that one up is because then when Tyrod comes in the game, his second play, he grips it and rips it and throws into double coverage and puts it like a soft little baby in the basket to the other team, also to Darius Slayton, who I thought first was not a good enough throw by Tyrod Taylor and into double coverage, and Darius Slayton didn't even attack that thing in the slightest. So wasn't a great sample size from Darius, but my big takeaway was like, the New York Football Giants with Daniel Jones don't want to risk anything in a game, and that includes overexposing him and his health. Gets rolled up ankle, boom. Right? Now you don't have your quarterback. Whereas with Tyrod Taylor, all of a sudden you go, well, let's see if we could do something here. Let's see if we try to push the ball down the field. And I think there is this very difficult balancing act. A lot more positives here, specifically about Saquon Barkley, just putting that in there, and we'll talk about it as the week moves along.
Yeah, let's talk about the quarterback room. So Adam, you and I are a little bit on the other side of the chicken and the egg, right? Like, which one comes first? I look at Daniel Jones and I look at it and they say, the offensive line can't keep him upright. There's too many pressures. Our wide receivers are depleted. Nobody can get separation. And when they do try to catch the ball, they actually drop the ball. And they look at it and they're like, well, we need to figure out a way to move the ball down the field. The best way to do it is a healthy dose of Saquon Barkley, Daniel Jones running it with naked bootlegs, and the tight end room. Like, that's the only way that we can.
46 yards on a career high, 31 carries for Saquon in this game.
I mean, we're going to get to him in a second. I want to spend the majority of this on him. But the whole point is, like, you think that the reason why that they have this conservative game plan is because they want to eliminate Daniel Jones making mistakes.
No, it's not.
My argument is the other side, where it's like the offensive line isn't good and the wide receivers aren't catching balls or getting separation, so we can't get him the ball. And then when Tyrod Taylor comes into the game, not only does he throw whether or not you want to air it out, he threw it into double coverage in a one wide receiver set, something you just cannot do. And he throws an interception, and then he can't get down and almost turns over the ball and tries to extend a play that we have lambasted Daniel Jones for 4 years. And it's like, that's why Daniel Jones is in there, because he's at least not making those mistakes anymore this year.
Okay, I want to make sure we get to Saquon Barkley here. I'm not. That's not what's going on here. The offensive line does play poorly, for large chunks of games. We all get that. The wide receivers do drop balls. That's not what it's about. It's about, like you just mentioned it there. Tyrod Taylor comes in and effectively does the thing that we've seen Daniel Jones do when the leash is off. When they let him go for it, you're going to get this mixed bag of good and bad, up and down. They've made an active choice to keep that under control and to give themselves a chance to grind out and win football games. But that inherently is an indication about where they feel they are with Daniel Jones as a quarterback. Like that.
But Tyrod Taylor's turning the ball over the exact same way. You're
misunderstanding, though. Come on now. We're going to move on to Saquon Barkley. Tyrod Taylor is a 33-year-old backup quarterback. He's not the future of the position. That's the point. It doesn't matter what Tyrod Taylor does. Frankly, Tyrod Taylor has a little bit of selfishness in him there, because he's trying to maybe show that he can be a starter in this league, if not for the Giants, for someone else. So he has a different agenda in his mind. Daniel Jones is trying to convince this coaching staff and this organization that he can be the franchise guy. So he's being reined in. You're using his best attribute. Like, let's just keep it very clean here. The New York Football Giants won this game. Let's be very clear. Hold on. Let's be very clear, dude.
Before we get to Saquon Barkley, I'm not
I know.
I promise.
We can get to it.
What I'm going to say is,
hold on, though.
If you were to ask all of our listeners in the chat, and you were to ask anyone else,
I want to stay focused on the
Giants fan that is talking about what they saw from Daniel Jones, I think people would be encouraged from what they saw from Daniel Jones today, regardless of the fact that he only threw for 100-something yards, 80 yards, regardless if he only threw
71 yards. 71 yards.
Right. So he only threw for 71 yards. He scored 2 touchdowns. He did not turn the ball over. He gave the team an opportunity to win.
Okay.
The fact that you're discounting the fact that he
I'm
ran
not
for those two
discounting it. Stop doing this. You
You
got to
said
stop.
with
You
his
have to
legs.
stop doing this, Andy. That is not what is going on. What he does well, he does well. We want to sit here and evaluate Daniel Jones as a franchise quarterback.
But why do you do that? But why does it matter if Daniel Jones is a franchise quarterback or not? Isn't it about the Giants winning football games?
Don't even try, dude. Hold on. Okay, hold on a second.
This is the Giant fan.
Hold on a second.
This is what I asked you about before.
Hold on a second. You cannot sit here and flip this around after game number 4 when the Giants are 3-1 and they're winning games, and we are ecstatic for it. I love that they won this game. Could not be any more happy. Everything that we have discussed over the offseason and coming into this year was you confirming, saying you believe that Daniel Jones is the franchise quarterback. And now, because they have managed to win games while not having him be overexposed or risk any injuries or risk some bad offensive line play or risk him looking bad, now you're going to flip it over and say, isn't it all about winning? Why does it matter about whether or not Daniel Jones is the franchise quarterback? That 100% is what matters. And by the way, if in 4 weeks from now, if the Giants lose 3 out of their next 4 games, if you turn back around and say, well, it's only about the evaluation process, I'm going to pull this tape up and I'm going to rub it right into your face, man, because regardless of whether or not I turn out to be right or wrong on Daniel Jones, the franchise quarterback, I have been consistent that the process for the Giants, by the way, in a winning football game, that all I want to do is talk about Saquon Barkley and what he's accomplishing for this team. I have always been consistent in saying it's about evaluating him as the franchise quarterback for this team. And through 4 games, he's done some nice things. He's had some issues, small plays. This game, when they finally gave him protection, when he had to stay in the pocket, he threw one high over the middle and missed Richie James for a 3rd down conversion. There are plays like that. There's far more things that are happening outside of Daniel Jones that need to get cleaned up on this team. But you watch the sample size and you continue to evaluate. He's been good. He's been okay to start the year. Nothing about his season to this point, including all of the metrics that you can go by, indicate that he is a guy that is going to be an elite quarterback. And I cannot sit here and have you flip it over to say, well, now we're winning ball games, so it doesn't matter. Okay. Saquon Barkley ran for 146 yards in this game. Yeah, he is the entire offense for the New York Football Giants. He is what matters. Speaking
of consistency, I think you're right. We should talk about consistency. The guy that you wanted to trade away in the offseason, Saquon Barkley, was the be-all, end-all of this team. And he is showing that, like when I told you there's no reason why we need to trade him, we need to be able to have him to even manufacture offense. Saquon Barkley was unbelievable today. Like what any doubter that Saquon Barkley has ever had, if they watched him play today and they turn around and say he's not the guy anymore, they are completely invalidated. And Adam, I know that was not your case. You never said that Saquon Barkley could not perform.
No, my case was he was so good you could still get something for him.
Right. You were like, yeah, let's trade him for pennies on the dollar. Adam, I would not hire you as my stock trader. But what I will say is now at this point, Saquon Barkley is everything to this Giants offense. And if we are going to continue to progress, he needs to be the focal point. I am shocked that they, I'm not shocked that they gave him 31 carries, the most of his career, most since probably high school at this point, because they had to do it especially when Daniel Jones was hurt and Tyrod Taylor. But what I will say is injury concerns have been a problem. He's had a couple of injuries in his career. Pounding him into the offensive line the way that they did, I was shocked by it, but it makes me realize this was our best chance to win. They're like,
it's the best way to win every game.
I mean, he's averaging over 5 yards a carry. He has the most rushing yards through 4 games of any Giant in the history of the New York Giants. He is everything to this team. And we just need to give a brief pause, give a cap tip to Saquon Barkley, because then all of a sudden he's running Wildcat and he's still picking up first downs. Like they literally asked him they're like, hey, can you sweep the sidelines? Can you get everyone's helmets wiped off from the mist and the rain? He literally did everything, Adam.
Oh yeah, and by the way, like he was phenomenal, man. He was absolutely phenomenal. He made something out of nothing. That play when he gets it thrown off for the little swing screen setup, and it's clearly blown up from step one. He goes ahead and spins away from contact, runs to the opposite side of the field to pick up 9 or 12 yards, whatever it turned out to be. Like that is exactly what you have going for him. And oddly enough, Andy, it's like this is what's so fascinating about it. He did an absolutely fantastic job in this game. What did he do? Did he have any catches in this one?
2 catches for 16 yards.
Okay,
You know,
we'll pick those up. We'll pick those up. Not big enough stat lines to get overly excited, but we'll pick them up anyway.
Right.
But you know what's so funny about it too is like, okay, so through 4 games, coming into a season when we're having these conversations about what's going to happen with Saquon Barkley at the end of the year, what's going to happen with Daniel Jones at the end of the year, through 4 games, we know for a fact, regardless of whatever happens, that Saquon Barkley is an absolute elite beast of a running back. Doesn't matter if the offensive line play is good or bad. He's going to have success. And we also know the offensive line is far better in run than it is in pass protection. But the dude is elite, right? There's no doubts about it. 4 weeks into the season, we're not singing those same praises about Daniel Jones. And while we both know Daniel Jones was never drafted at the same hype level as a Saquon Barkley, that's what I think we're talking about, even in these wins. And like, I just want moments. I don't want everything. I want a moment. Like when Saquon Barkley breaks off a 20-plus yard run that changes the field position, that puts them in a spot where Daniel Jones can run a naked bootleg and just kind of gentleman stride into the left side of the end zone, right? All those things are predicated off of what Daniel Jones is, what Saquon Barkley is doing so well. And that's what I want. I don't want the consistency that Barkley plays with. We know that's not what we're looking for, but I want the moments. And I think like we talk about Tay Crowder giving us some moments in this game. We talk about Gary Brightwell recovering the fumble and giving us a moment, right? We talk about the closing speed of Adoree Jackson on just 2 or 3 key plays because they're not throwing the ball anywhere with Justin Fields. Everyone is giving you these little moments. And maybe in that regard, we did get a couple of moments from Daniel Jones in this game, right? The naked bootlegs when all of a sudden he's running. Hey, man, he's getting the job done with the best attribute that he has. And I just find it fascinating finding out what is going to happen with him and with his ankle. So this is what we have coming out of this game. Kenny Golladay, I said this at the top. Kenny Golladay had a bit of a knee issue. Nobody cares. Daniel Jones, ankle. We're going to monitor that very closely and see what that's going to look like going forward. Obviously, Tyrod Taylor left the game with the concussion protocol, so it matters kind of even a layer deeper because if neither one of those quarterbacks is available for next week in London against Green Bay, we all of a sudden find ourselves looking for some people out there on the market.
The web train
exactly.
will begin. But Adam, to your point,
I
mean, I messaged you. Listen, I know that there were no excuses against this Bears team. That was one consistent message that you've had for me this entire week is like, no excuses. If you want to be a productive team, you want to look better.
Yeah. How do you feel about this game overall? Like we came into it saying we want a convincing win. I understand. Like we know that Daniel Jones went out, so things get kind of haywire late in the third quarter there. But even up until that point, I don't think we were like, hey, look what we've accomplished here, right?
I am proud of this team because these are games
Guys,
that
the guy in the
when
locker
we're
expected,
expected,
ball right here, yeah.
when we're expected to win games, we end up losing them in confounding fashion. Whether it's a muff punt, we give up a 4th and 10, and we lose these games. And now we're finding a way to win these games.
Okay,
and
can I ask you a philosophical question then?
Sure.
Because like I agree, like you're using the thing that's happened to Giants teams in the past, finding ways to lose games, which has always been true, right? The returner not catching the ball for Chicago, that's our move. And by the way, Richie James did that.
It happened to us today. Yeah, it happened to us today. Yeah.
The Giants are still trying to do that, but and that's kind of my point, though. You bring up those things, like this game still had all of the mistakes. It just so happens we were playing a team equally or more inept than us. And that's what I think has been a narrative over these first 4 games. When you think about the one loss to the Dallas Cowboys, what was it? They didn't give us a lot of mistakes. They didn't do things to help us get out in front of it, to let our defense dictate terms a little bit, combined with getting some guys back from injury, right? Like there's some factors timing wise inside of that game, but I find it fascinating, right? Like it's a very interesting process to look at, like, well, we're not making the mistakes that we normally would. Well, we still are, but we're having some areas of success that we don't anticipate. There's a question that we talked about in a text too when it comes to the coaching staff I want to get to, but go ahead.
I was just gonna say I agree with you philosophically. It's like we haven't cleaned up all the mistakes. We're kind of winning these games ugly. We
Yeah,
lost to
which is
Dallas,
fine.
even though we have a lead in the second half. But we're in these games, and like it's usually been a coin flip. And we thought we were less talented than the other team, and we end up losing the game. What I will say, the other piece of it is we talked about Tennessee after they got blown
That's a
out
good one, yeah.
by Buffalo, right? They got destroyed by Buffalo, and everyone turns around and says, that Giants win week 1 is invalidated because they stink. They got blown out by 30 points against the Bills in a primetime game. Guess what? Tennessee comes out and just steamrolls the Las Vegas Raiders. And then they go into the Indianapolis Colts, who just beat the Chiefs, and they dominate that game with Derrick Henry, and they win that game.
Yeah.
And
well, Vegas sucks, though, so.
Well, again, you say Vegas stinks, but then you have the Colts who just beat the Chiefs, and they get steamrolled.
I know what you mean. Yeah, I know what you mean.
And then you look at the Panthers. We're like, oh, they can't move the ball. They stink with Baker Mayfield. They go and they play the Saints, and they go beat the Saints. And so, like, I'm kind of tired of the idea of like the teams that we're beating are terrible. We're not looking good. It's like to change a culture, you need to start winning games that you should win or winning games against teams that are at least formidable against your skill level. And we're doing that. And we haven't done that. Adam, they showed a stat that said we haven't won 3 games in the last 7 years until week 10. Like that is how long it takes us to win 3 games.
Oh, sure.
Right now we're 3-1 and we're dissecting whether Jones is the franchise quarterback. Can we move the ball effectively down the field? Are we making the wrong mistakes? Oh, we're giving credence to the Bears not being a good offense because Justin Fields isn't good. It's like, can we just?
But they're not though. But wasn't.
Can't you just enjoy? Adam,
no, I love the victories,
Adam,
but no,
Adam, I want you to enjoy
Andy,
a win.
You just
said, can you enjoy this?
You said
enjoy this win a little bit? Can you? I don't. Feel
I loved
like
it. It was a great win, man. I pumped my fist right on the couch. I was ecstatic about it. The Giants got to kill out the clock. It was fantastic. Like they got to watch the Chicago Bears run the Keystone Cops scene there. Which, by the way, can we just really briefly? Don't even tell me that your starfish didn't pucker up just a bit as that thing got across midfield.
The Giants sent the fireworks off before the play was even done. The ball's still being flipped over the head.
There was a couple of moments. Guys. Thankfully, there was enough offensive linemen in the mix there for the Chicago Bears that like they couldn't keep flinging that thing around. But my point, like, I absolutely love it. It's amazing. But like, I keep coming back to this thing of like, but I still like, because yes, I want the team to do well. But guess what? Here's what's not going to change for me in 4 weeks if they win or lose games. Well, I shouldn't say that. If the Giants go 3-1 over the next 4 games,
I'm like
and they're
the
6-2,
and the Ravens, like if they win those games, you're gonna be like, well, they're winning these games ugly, Andy. They're 5-1. I know they beat people in the NFC Championship game,
but that's where it is relative to competition. Like, and I know that you want the team, and as do I, and I get the point that you're making, but like it is hard to look back on the first 4 games and say, and here's the 2 things. 1, you never give back wins. We keep saying that. The wins are the wins. Sometimes, hey, listen, Titans suck week 1. That's their fucking problem, not mine. Excuse my language. Like, I don't care, right? We got the win. So kick rock. Same way. You think that the Dallas Cowboys are, care that they beat us with Cooper Rush and he's trying to be a 3-0 quarterback over 20 years that he, gets random spot starts? No, nobody cares. However, especially early in the season, this is when, and we talked about it with the way preseason works and training camp and everything else, it is more chaotic. So you always take all these wins. This is what used to be the first quarter of the season, right? Now you'll start to look at the next quarter of the season, and that's going to involve Green Bay and Baltimore and Jacksonville,
who looks way better than we thought they were going to be. It's going to be a tough road, Adam. You were absolutely right.
3 out of the next 4. Like, unlike I'd say start of the year, regardless of what happened, you would have said 3 out of 4 are games we can compete and maybe win in, like more or less.
Well, let's just be fair. The Titans were the number 1 seed in
the
AFC
but let's
last
be fair.
Year.
You and I both went to that game saying they were gettable. I thought Dallas was the one with Dak Prescott that I thought, man, that'd be a really uphill battle. But I felt fine at least staying competitive in week 1. I thought we could win week 2. I thought week 3 would be hard, and then I thought we would beat. Should try to beat Chicago. I thought 2-2 would have been a nice start to the season and a reasonable expectation.
And now we're 3-1, and if
now
you were
the
to
next
do a check mark
begins.
right now, though, overall, you'd say The team has mistakes to clean up. We have a ton of injuries. We still need Daniel Jones to play a little bit better. We need some help at the wide receiving room. Like, this is the check-in moment.
Khalil
We
Pimpleton
need
time,
that
baby.
help. I mean, we need Evan Neal to hopefully not have a neck injury, because Devery Henderson, Hamilton, like, not the guy that we necessarily need to see at right tackle.
Yeah.
We need a lot of things to go right as we move forward. But Adam, at the end of the day, we are 3-1, and we are a winning football team. We are tied for second, third in the division. Cowboys have the tiebreaker.
Right
But listen, Green Bay is going to be a very, very tough matchup. And if Aaron Rodgers struggles and the Giants win that game 17-14, again, there will be no apologies from me. And does that change things for you if the Giants go out and beat the Packers in London, or would you feel like there's a bunch of caveats to that one, knowing that, like, Daniel Jones may be hurt? We don't know if Leonard Williams is back. We don't know what our wide receiving core is going to be. What are, sneak peek of the week preview of what we're doing? Like, does next week mean a lot to you in terms of what you're going to see?
I'll tell you what I am confirming over the first 4 weeks, that Brian Daboll is the head coach of the New York Football Giants, right? That he is going to be here for the long haul. This is not a 2-year stint and all of a sudden, let's get rid of Pat Shurmur. All of a sudden, let's get rid of Joe Judge. All of a sudden, let's get rid of Ben McAdoo. Like, I think that those days are long behind us. I think when you look at some of the young players, though there's been injuries as well, we're already seeing the way Joe Shane operates and how he's gone out and managed to find some talent and is trying to get the job done. I'm bullish on what the coaching staff is accomplishing. I'm bullish on changing, the fun little word we all like to use, the culture of this franchise. I believe in all of that. The Giants can go out next week and win another grind out game against Green Bay. They could win the exact same game they played today. They could do the exact same thing next week. It will not change. It won't change my opinion on Daniel Jones. Let's say if he was healthy. If he isn't healthy and it's Tyrod Taylor or Jabroni Pumpleduck, the bottom line is I'm going to look at it and say, hey, Azeez Ojulari and Kayvon Thibodeau and Dexter Lawrence, Xavier McKinney, Adoree Jackson, the side of the football that we thought we had more answers coming into the year than the offensive side, hey, that is becoming the cornerstone. As great New York Football Giants teams have historically always had a strong defensive unit that can wreak a havoc on a team. The day when I start to turn what this season can be realistically is when the offense, whether it's offensive line play, whatever else has to happen, when the opportunity comes where Daniel Jones shows me that Tampa Bay magic that he had in his rookie season, right? Like, when I get that flash this year from Daniel Jones, understanding all the limitations that are around him and that he may have himself, that's when I'll start to say, hey, something can change here. Because until that point, we're a little bit of smoke and mirrors, and that's okay, because we're a lot of grit and hustle and heart as well. And we're a lot of Saquon Barkley, baby, is what we are.
Adam, I have a question for you. Hold on.
Break anything.
Hold on. I have a half serious question for you from Molly Mall, the Magic Molly Mall. Shout out to Notorious B.I.G. I love that reference. For anyone that doesn't know it, please go listen to Juicy by Notorious B.I.G. This is a very interesting thing. I hope DJ didn't break anything either. It is concerning considering they would not let him throw a pass.
Oh, yeah, I did want to get to this.
Like, they did not let him throw a pass, and the fact that he was still out there was a little bit egregious by the coaching staff, but they didn't actually make him do anything. He didn't really move at all. They just kind of had him as a statue. I mean, do you want to talk about that for a minute, or do you want me to ask a question about it?
No, I'll just say quickly, because I'm speaking glowingly about the coaching staff. I don't understand what the process is there. Now, I understand that his helmet may be getting the play calls and not everybody's mic'd up, so you can't communicate those. That piece I understand. But if you're telling me that he wasn't healthy enough to go in there and be able to throw passes or whatever you want him to do offensively, I don't understand him running in and out of the huddle, running out to the sideline, lining up, and then standing still. Like, I get that, but at a certain point there, like, it works out. You're close enough field goal range, but you played 10 on 11 there. You're not telling me that having tight end X lined up as a wide receiver and throwing a little bit of a block for you or whatever it is, right? Like, I didn't love the decision-making process from the coaching staff in that spot, because it felt a little bit like, I get we're in a bad way here, but if you said he wasn't good enough to go back in and play and you put in Tyrod Taylor, then Saquon Barkley's taking Wildcat snaps and we live with the results.
Right. Especially after what you saw from Tua on Thursday night, if a
Yes,
player's
yes.
health is in jeopardy, he needs to stay off the field.
Yeah.
But we hope DJ didn't break anything. If it comes out that he has a broken ankle and he was back out there on the field, that is
Yeah.
malpractice from the Giants. But Adam, this is a further question now that we're thinking about. Like, they didn't think he was healthy enough to even throw a football. Now they had the lead and they were just trying to salt it away. So I understand what was going on. But let's just say Daniel Jones has a broken ankle and he is out. Tyrod Taylor is in the concussion protocol. I know this is going to sound ridiculous, and this is not a player that I have ever envisioned being on the New York Football Giants. But
you're gonna say Colin Kaepernick? I get it.
No. Based on how the Giants are running their offense,
where are you going?
What would you think about the Giants running someone like Cam Newton out there to run this type of offense that they're playing? They're not looking to take big shots on the field. They want another body to be able to move the ball. Like, I have never been a huge Cam Newton fan in terms of like how his game is, but the way the Giants offense is looking and what they're trying to do based on the personnel out there, his type of style actually matches up with what the Giants are looking to do on the field.
Yeah, I don't hate that at all. I think any quarterback that you think is physical enough, like this, be like a Marcus Mariota who's shown the ability to do it, right? And I'm not going to mention the high level guys like Josh Allen, et cetera, but those kind of players that you think, Cam Newton, can you run between the tackles when we ask you to, and then maybe get on the edge and dump it off the 3-yard passes that you hope someone takes somewhere? Yeah, no, I'd be fine with that.
Because if Tyrod's out,
because Davis Webb is not in that vein.
Right. Yeah. He's a drop back passer, and he showed that in the preseason, and he moves the ball around the field. It's one of those things, like, if you want to stay consistent with the scheme that you've been running, you want a guy that can get out on the naked bootleg. You want a guy that can stay strong, like, and be able to move the pile. You want that type of thing. Cam Newton is just an example, but it makes me think, when I see a question like, if Daniel Jones is hurt for an extended period and Tyrod has a concussion, we're talking about Davis Webb and nobody else on the roster or even on the practice squad right now. Adam, we're going to have to start talking, and we'll talk about it during the week. Yeah. The Giants, based on how some of this goes, may need to start digging deep into the barrel to figure out what they actually have.
And when you talk about playing Green Bay in London, it's about manufacturing an opportunity to win a game. So it's like, whatever it looks like, right? And that's a final note here. We'll be in all week talking about this, but that's the difference between wanting the offense to do as much as it can, to be as open as possible so that you can evaluate a player like Daniel Jones, versus if you have Cam Newton back there or Davis Webb, you're trying to manufacture wins. And that's the push and pull, I think. And this is the push and pull of the season. Because at the end of the day, friends, guess what? We're hanging out here ecstatic that the Giants won the football game, that they are 3-1, that they are third in the division, but right on the heels of the Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles. And yet there is all this other stuff. And I think that's the balance of the results on the field and the eye test around a lot of different things. One thing we know for sure is this defense is going to continue to get better and better as the year progresses along. Leonard Williams is probably going to be back next week by all accounts. Azeez Ojulari, Kayvon Thibodeau getting healthy, right? Some guys really starting to play downhill. That's what I'm the most excited about, man. One quarter through the season, this defensive side of the ball has 5, 6, 7, 8 guys that are going to be a part of this unit going forward, let alone some of the players that we aren't seeing on the field because of injuries. That makes me ecstatic. Unfortunately, little Jekyll and Hyde, because I could say there's 7, 8, 9, or 10 positions on the offensive side that we need to bring in other talent to fill it out. I'm all over the map, man. Giants won.
I got you, Adam. I'll close this thing out. At the end of the day, the Giants are missing half of their starters across both sides of the ball, and we are 3-1. And you know what that means, Adam? You need to be happy, because if we can steal a game coming up here, if we can find a way to split between the Packers and the Ravens, and we're a above 500 team, and we're starting to get momentum with healthy players like Wan'Dale and others coming back, then things can get a little bit interesting, especially seeing how Washington is playing right now. The Giants will have opportunities, but right now, enjoy the win when we have it. It was ugly today. Players got injured. Saquon is the man, but we are ready and we are 3-1, my friend.
Saquon is the man. We need not say more. We're going to talk about updating these injury reports throughout the week. There are a lot of things offensively that get better, as Andy mentioned, when you get a Wan'Dale Robinson out there, when you get a Kadarius Toney out there. Try to find some balance here. Update Evan Neal, update Daniel Jones, update Tyrod Taylor. Why? Because we're Giants. So obviously, every time you think you're getting 3 guys back, 3 more at least have to potentially miss games. Get us over on YouTube. Obviously, it's where we're doing this thing. We appreciate everyone in the comments. We appreciate everyone being a part of our live sessions. Get it over on the podcast feed, wherever you get those needs fulfilled. And as Andy Backwoods and myself, quite frankly, I should be including myself in this every time as well.
I like how you use it. I like how you use this time to just add that in there, Adam.
And nay, demand the people know.
As always, baby, let's go Big Blue.